Well, good evening. I'm Pat Gales, and I'm a member of the Friends Group for the Dighton Public Library, and we're here at our annual Candidates Night. We were expecting a few more people, but anyway, thank you for coming out, and we'll begin by saying the pledge to the flag before we start our Candidates Night. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first thing I'll do is just read from the bottom of the ballot up the candidates that are running. Many of our positions are just one person running. For Housing Authority, we have Adele Collard. Parks and Recreation Commissioner is Tim Rines, who is sitting up here tonight. Tree Warden is Tom Ferry. Sewer Commissioner, Tom Ferry. Public Library Trustee is Allison Simplisti. Planning Board is Robert Woods. I'm surprised he's not here. Dighton Rehoboth Regional School Committee is Christopher Andrade and Glenn A. Jefferson. They're both candidates for re-election. Board of Assessors is Joseph Sylvia, Jr. Moderator is William McKeon. He's in the audience tonight. And for the Board of Selectmen, we have Thomas Borquin, Daniel Ajou, and Nancy Gula running. So we're going to begin our candidates night. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to talk about their position and why they're running. At that point, because Tim is the only person up here, he will take questions for the Parks and Recreation. Then we'll move on to the selectmen candidates. They'll give their introduction, and then they'll have a chance to answer questions, 1 minute to answer questions from the audience. And they'll both answer the same question. So let's begin with Tim Rines. Come on up, Tim.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Dighton Public Library for sponsoring this Candidates Night this evening. Our moderator, Ms. Patricia Gales, and I'd also like to thank everyone who's in attendance for being here this evening. My name is Timothy Rines. I live at 316 Main Street in Dighton. I'm a 57-year-old man and a 57-year resident of this town. My family has a 100-year history in this town. The reason why I'm running for re-election for the Parks and Recreation is that I've already served 2 3-year terms for a total of 6 years, and I feel that we've accomplished quite a bit in town in the Recreation Department side of things. We've built new tennis courts and basketball courts at the police station area. We are in the midst of repaving possibly a basketball court with new apparatus in the North Dighton playground, and we're also looking at improving some of the other parks in town by buying different equipment as such. The other individuals I serve with, I do have the pleasure of serving with Mr. David Rosa, who is also a commissioner in town, and Ms. Suzanne Cody is also one of my fellow commissioners. I specifically got involved with this because there's a history in my family of my dad was not only a park commissioner, but he was also on the school committee many years ago, and also served as a member of the Board of Selectmen until his passing. So I just believe that community service is something that I believe is, part of me, and I will never be able to fill the shoes that my father wore all those years. I'm trying my best, and that's all that I can ask for. And I do enjoy being involved with the town in many capacities, not also on the Park and Rec, but I'm also the chairman of the CPC, which is one of the positions that's allocated through the state law that someone from the Recreation Department has to hold one of those positions, and I have the pleasure of serving as chair on that committee. So as I say, we're looking at hopefully running his tennis program again in the summer. We're looking at contacting the high school to get a few individuals, so maybe a young man and a young lady, to come out and make a few dollars a summer and instruct our children in tennis. Basketball is kind of tough to have some type of a program down there only because of the limited parking space. I believe that once, and hopefully the new police station is completed, that we will possibly be able to move into that location. It will have extra room to park as such. So at this time, I would entertain any questions that the public has. I was going to say, hearing none, let's vote. But I'll leave that up to the moderator. I don't want to steal his thunder. So. But again, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Dighton Library and Mrs. Diels for being our moderator this evening, and also my fellow hopeful electorates over here on my left of the dais. And good luck to everyone who's running in town for any position. It can be taxing at times. Ask our new chairman of the board of selectmen, Mr. Taylor, but he's doing a fine job. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Diels.
Okay, now we have our candidates for selectmen. We're going to go in alphabetical order, so Tom and Nancy will each have 3 minutes. Brenda is my timekeeper. And then afterwards, we'll have questions from the floor. So, and we'll start with Tom. Tom Borkwood.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to start off, well, usual meeting. Tom Berkman, 3076 Hunters Hill Drive. I'd like to thank the library for sponsoring. Also, anyone that showed up. This is probably, I've been to a few of these events and some hearings and such. It's probably the smallest thing I've turned on. But it's good that I appreciate you showed up. What they want, what I'd like to do is just tell you, I got about 3 minutes. So. I already said, not too much. I'm seeking the office of Selectman in Dighton. I announced my candidacy. I have served on some committees, like the town administrator selection committee. It went on for a number of years, and then we finally found somebody through a private consultant. But I was involved with that process, and I did learn a lot about it because I spent a lot of time at town hall. And if you actually go up there and spend some time up there, you get a better feel for what goes on inside the town government, not just from the outside looking in. When you get up inside there and start meeting everybody and working on different committees. Another, I got involved with the Development Industrial Commission, which is working hard. It's another learning experience because of our infrastructure and some of the different ideas. At one time, Dighton had a huge industrial base years ago. I mean, it was Raytheon, Standard Coil, stuff like that. My wife's mother actually worked at Standard Coil, and I think Mr. Finette, who was on the conservation, who's been on that thing over 40 years, actually was her boss, going back quite a ways. I'm not originally from Dighton, of course, but spent most of my time in Somerset. But I moved here, I've been here about 5 years. And then the other thing I got approached by Tim on the CPC. I'm still kind of got my training wheels on for that. I'm still learning some of that. And but it's interesting because they're trying to balance out some of the historical with, of course, the town is changing somewhat. I mean, there's not too many farms left, but they're trying to preserve some of the stuff from the past, but still we have to move ahead and see where we're leading. You know, with the housing situation, we keep getting a lot of housing developments. Anyhow, let me get back to the meat of the matter here. Why do I want to be selected? All right. I'm already out of time? Oh, wow, that goes by fast. Well, I hope you'll ask some questions. Because that goes fast, huh? Well, it's my first time, so I didn't know. I'll see how long I can drag it out before you throw me off. But I mean, I hope that somebody will ask me some questions. Yeah, somebody can talk. You know, sorry about that. I didn't realize it. Jack, Mr. Taylor. Oh.
Yeah.
And you want to hold it for let Nancy talk?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nancy, and
You forgot the format, Jack.
We know each other. I mean, Nancy's been so gracious, by the way, and I wish you the best of luck, by the way. Thank you.
3 minutes, Nancy. Well, the taser comes out. I know about the taser. That's why Bob's here. Somebody's armed. My name is Nancy Goulart. I am the incumbent. I've served as the member of the board since September of 2015. I also served from 2007 to 2010. And when I was not a selectman, starting when I retired 16 years ago, I've been a member of the finance committee. I've held office, I think, continually except for 2 months when I lost the election and had to wait to get the appointment to the finance committee. The reason I'm running is because there are a number of projects I'm involved with that I want to keep working on. There are a number of projects I've been involved with that were difficult because, quite frankly, I knew nothing about them, but I learned and I enjoyed doing them. Stormwater, 3 bridge projects, working with Mr. Ferry and other department heads on various projects that have come along. I think it's very important that we continue to have contacts outside of the town of Dighton. Dighton is not fenced in. I'm fortunate that starting early, I was appointed to the Committee for Energy and the Environment at Mass Municipal. That has led me to have many contacts across the state that have been beneficial to this town. That's where I met an engineer who, in effect, provided the technical expertise that was needed in order for us to formulate a stormwater plan. We paid $0 for that. That is the same engineering firm that stepped up when we had problems with landfill testing. They have been very good to the town of Dighton. The other thing is, through MMA, I meet people from around the state. Right now, we have a committee member from North Adams. I mean, he comes in from North Adams to go to our meeting on the second Wednesday of the month. That expertise is important, but it's also allowed me to have contacts at the State House, other than our senator and rep. And it was at one of those visits, when I went to watch the signing of the Weed Whacker bill, that I found out about the Community Cabinet Compact. And I came back to Town Hall all enthused and talked to my colleagues. At the time, it was Mr. Cronin and Dr. Zagrafis, and said, I think we ought to go for this, guys. They agreed, and we began working on it, and I think most of you know that brought the Lieutenant Governor to town to sign that compact. And since that has happened, this town has had a number of opportunities that are being pursued for grant money. They told me that if we could get that designation, it was going to open a lot of doors, and I believe that's true. We have received grant money for various projects, and we are continuing to pursue grant money. Thank goodness we're finally seeing a police station. That was talked about in 2007 when I was first on the board. It does, yes. But in any case, thank you very much for coming, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Did we decide we were going to pass this back and forth?
I thought we decided maybe they come up to the mic and just take the questions.
Okay. So now we're going to have questions, and it might be easier since there's just 2 if you just came up and stood here. And each of you will have 1 minute to answer the question from the audience, the same question. Okay? You want to come and join me? No, both of you. Both of you. Yeah, I think it'll go faster that way. A little different than we usually pass them.
Well, the size, yeah.
Yeah.
I see her, we're down there every week at the town meeting.
Okay, questions?
Oh,
Can I ask my question?
Yes, Jeff.
Why do you want this?
well, I've been in town about 5 years and got involved with town government, and I love the town, and I want to give back. And basically, so that's why I got involved, and I try to go to every meeting, because if you go into those meetings, even though it's not that crowded, you do get a little stuff out of there. There's stuff that goes on that, you learn things. And like I said, I just wanted, I'll thank Nancy again. She's been very gracious and actually helped me learn some stuff, because she was the first one that was mentoring us on the TA committee. And that's how she's very nice about that. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but she helps you learn, because she's been involved in it, she helps a new person learn.
You sound like you can't pay me.
You, yeah. Well, I told you about my wife. I'm kidding, but yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm just trying to be, I'm telling the truth, that's all.
Okay, Nancy, why do you want to be selectman?
Well, as I said, I want to continue projects that I'm working on. I also think there are opportunities ahead of us. One of the things that we are still actively trying to do is find a location for a medical marijuana site. I support medical marijuana. I did not support the overlay district that was going to be on top of Alice's restaurant. When it was at the mill in North Dighton, I thought that was appropriate. It could be segregated, it would be private, it wouldn't be around homes, and only people going to that facility would be there. When you put it in a place where our only sort of family breakfast spot is, that's not good. I want to continue to have the contacts with the state. I want to continue to work on programs at the state level. The bottle bill, right now we're working on the deposit on NIPS. But we also have environmental issues. We deal with electrical rates and things of that nature. Stormwater, there's that dirty word again, but it's still there.
That's good.
Questions?
I want to know how the sidewalk program would be continued by each of the candidates.
How the sidewalk program would be continued by each of the candidates, okay? We'll let Nancy answer first.
The sidewalk program is very good hands. It's in the hands of Tom Ferry, okay? That's part of the Complete Streets program. As you know, the Center Street sidewalk was put in. The reason why we haven't finished that landscaping in front of the school is because of the expansion that's going to take place. So they basically told us, hold off on that. The other expansion as far as Somerset Avenue, Pearl Street, and Center Street west from the intersection up to the entrance to Stonegate Landing. That's all moving ahead. We have the money already from the state, again, Complete Streets program. We have employed an engineer to draw the layout, and once that's all complete, we'll have an appraiser look at all the properties. There will be land taking involved, just like there was on Center Street. And then the process will take place to negotiate those payments to the landowners. And we're hoping that will be moving ahead this summer.
Can I respond to that? Okay, I'm familiar with that by attending the meetings on a weekly basis, and basically, I absolutely continue with it. I do, even though I was involved, retired firefighter, but I was involved with the firefighters union, and I did do a lot of work where I had to go to Boston, I had to go to Washington. So I do also have contacts with politicians, people that I know all the local people. I've worked with Pat Haddad when I lived in Somerset, so we actually invited her to our Development Industrial Commission meeting. We had a little communication thing with Jack. Chairman Taylor did attend that, and she brought a lot of good knowledge in and passed it on to the board of selectmen. So that was just a contact that I had from being in Somerset, and I did run before in Somerset. So I mean, it's not the first time that we didn't have that little thing, which is nice. You only have one time to meet. That's what's hard. That's terrible, I think. Yeah, and he's got the taser over there.
I saved it just for this event. Any other questions? Joanne?
Hi, can you share your thoughts on the expansion of the library?
Okay, once again, I've been involved going to these meetings, and you pick up a lot of knowledge. I did go to, you had an open house or something, and Mr. Taylor ran, and I did attend that. There was an informational, there was an architect there, design. They want to preserve part of the old building, but it's basically, they showed me the bathroom. It's total, I couldn't believe that was your bathroom. It was very small. I believe in that library thing. You got to have a library. It's kind of like, you know what I mean, part of the community, this a centerpiece. They're 21 on the grant. I know that your director went up with the new town administrator to Boston, I believe, on a field trip, and went up there and saw Pat Haddad. And I guess they got the grant. There's some particulars on something they gotta vote on, money. There's some additional money has to be voted on. Absolutely, there's no reason, I have a grandson, there's no reason I would not support a library. Of course I support it. I'm just trying to fund for everything, you know what I mean?
Nancy?
I support a new library, quite frankly. I don't support expansion of that existing building. My personal opinion is it makes a beautiful old building ugly. I was hoping they were going to bring forth the plans that we had back in 2007 when my opponent said, don't vote for her because she supports that library. I still support a library. I use the library myself. I think it's something every community needs. I don't think libraries become obsolete. It's just that I would love to see the original, I call it looks like the Cape Cod type architecture, the white building, and I would love to see that plan resurrected. I thought that was a beautiful design, and I really thought was more fit the town of Dighton. I don't believe that what has been proposed, converting that, as I said, I like that building, it's historic, it fits the neighborhood, and the glass and steel that's proposed to add on, no, I don't like it.
Thank you. Questions? Way in the back?
Yes, this marijuana thing, is it just for medical marijuana, or is this just a step towards recreational marijuana?
Is it just medical marijuana, or are we going to
Have
approve
recreational. also.
recreational marijuana? Nancy, you want to answer first?
This community did approve legalizing marijuana. That's the record. The thing that concerned me the most that night we were here to vote on that overlay district for around Alice's restaurant, I had gotten word from MMA. They had summarized the legislation as it stood. And if you approve medical marijuana, you cannot keep recreational marijuana out. There are things a community can do to limit where it can be. And certainly that's what we're relying on planning and zoning and anybody else in this town who is concerned about, they're calling it adult use marijuana. It's recreational. As far as the medical, I support that. I mean, there's medical evidence that people do benefit from it. And I look at that totally different than I do recreational marijuana.
I was involved about our commission. We were trying to get a business in here. That was one of the reasons we got involved in the Development Industrial Commission, was involved with that. Yes, the selection of the initial site wasn't that popular, and it lost by 3 votes because they tried to change the overlay. But also, they are trying to look like Nancy mentioned, the different planning, zoning. I try to be involved with them when I can. They're looking at ideas. They got to come up with some, if they don't come up with some rules and regulations for our town, maybe bylaws, whatever you want to call it, you could have something come in here, and they're working on it. I guess I support the medical, but if they don't get that wrapped up, I mean, they will, they're working on some kind of regulation. Someone could come into a business area and just open up a shop. I mean, that's what could happen. So they're trying to work on the bylaws on that. But I do support the medical in the right location. You also got to remember these buffaloes, the toot-toot thing again, so we got to stop that. You know what I mean? I can piggyback on something else. I don't like that. All right.
You have to think fast.
Well, you can only talk.
Questions? Bill?
Could each of you please comment on the suggestion that the selectmen meet only every other week, year-round, instead of just during the summer season?
That the selectmen meet only every other week instead of just in the summer. So they do that all year? Okay.
They meet weekly
Yeah.
during the year, except in the summer, when they meet every other week.
Right. Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I was at that meeting, we started talking about that. I don't think the board they're not rushing into anything right now from what I saw, but I don't think they're in total agreement on it yet. They haven't really decided yet on it. But I don't think, they're still weighing their out. I don't think there were a couple select people that weren't really gonna rush into it right now, so nothing's been done. As far as my opinion, I like going up there every week, but I'm not in that position at this point. You know, you never know, anything could happen, but I would go, I don't mind working up there every week. I don't know, things have to get done, I don't know. I think that what we're trying to do is get feedback. I can't speak for Nancy, but I think we're trying to get feedback from people sending emails in and some more opinions before they make a decision. I don't mind meeting every week up there. I was ready for the beat button. I still got time. But if you ever want to piggyback on something, maybe we can figure this thing out. Nancy? I'm trying to beat the tool over there. Beat your clock. That's nice.
When this came up at the meeting last week, my position was I thought we should take it under advisement, because I think personally, I want to know how townspeople feel about it. Now, the summer schedule is great. I think we all like the June, July, August bi-weekly meetings. And it seems to work okay. Last year we had a few, we didn't have many weeks off, let me put it that way, because there were topics that came up that we had to have a meeting and act on. So even though we were on a bi-weekly schedule, we were still there when we had to be. It's the tradition in this town. I want to know how people feel about it. My other concern is that town hall should be open on Wednesday nights. It is open Wednesday nights except during the summer schedule. Some of the elected officials have said to me, if the Board of Selectmen is not going to meet, we're not open in these offices. I think that's a loss to the town personally. I don't think that having one selectman sitting in that office is going to make it any easier for those people to have those offices open.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Joanne?
How do you feel about increasing solar farms in the town?
How do you feel about increasing solar farms in the town? Okay, Nancy?
If there are solar developers that want to come into this town that are going to obey the rules and regs, like number one, we don't want to see them. We want them to be far enough off the road so they're not eyesores. I think we all know what it's like to ride around if you go to Plymouth or you head for other locations. They're everywhere along the highways. So I don't want to look at them. I will never support another pilot agreement in this town, and I will tell you, we have two that we will be bringing to town meeting eventually, if we can get the language worked out. Those were negotiated by previous boards, and we've got to deal with them. But as far as anybody new coming in looking for a pilot agreement, I will not support one. We have enough solar farms in town that don't need them and have been built and up and running. It's, again, if they come in and follow the rules, and the rules are enforced. I know there are some, Richmond Hill, I drove up there and the fence isn't high enough. I was sitting in the road looking at solar farms, so that's my position on that.
Yes, I concur, I agree, as long as they're in the right location. But on a positive note, some of the residential stuff, they're actually improving. Like, they almost look like shingles on the roofs. So that's nice, you're not gonna have those sitting in your backyards as far as residential. But yeah, if you go down Williams, you can see one that's sitting back there, but it's pretty back, it's far back there, but you can still see. I kind of think I think there's some, I can't talk about what's going on, but I think might be some court, there could be litigation, I'm not sure, because I'm not involved at that level, but yeah, if they're environmentally friendly, I think people want to have, we're losing a lot of our woods and, you know, with the 40Bs and everything else that's going on, you can't stop it. You can try to regulate it, but you can't stop it. But I think you could, as Nancy mentioned, I think people are fed up with the pilot thing, pilot agreements from on here. There's the two.
Thank you. Any other questions? Way in the back?
Yes, there was talk about putting a new sewage line somewhere to bring in industry. And most of the time you hear industry that wants to come in, they say the taxes are too high. They're just not gonna come in.
All right, so there was talk of a new sewage line to help support the industry, to attract
defray
industries?
and have them put in septic systems and different things. But they just don't come in because of the tax rate.
Okay, so is your question about the sewer line or the tax rate?
Both.
Both. Tom?
Yes, another thing I've been looking at because of being on that business, the Development Industrial Commission, which is actually a business or economic development commission that's connected to the state. We're trying to work with our local select folks and the townspeople. And yes, we need to get something in here. The infrastructure in this town is complicated. It's $1 million a mile to put in a sewer line. $1 million a mile. Okay, so if, let's say you want to get a small supermarket or something in here, a small little examples, groceries, anything. Somebody's gonna have to incur that cost unless you can get a grant, some grant money. Now, I know that Somerset's been successful in some of their extensions into Swansea, but don't forget, Somerset had the money at the time with the 2 power plants, and they had all that sewer in already. Rainham, for example, their timing, there goes the thing. The timing was good, and they were able to get it in. That's why Rainham has a wall. You know what I mean? They have a lot of business. So the taxes. In other words, I agree. The homeowner, somehow you got to balance it out. It's not easy. It's not easy to come up with a formula because of the infrastructure. There was no, down the road there. Years ago, they didn't think about planning for that. They just figured it would always be farms. But unfortunately, it's changing, And these people come in, they're not even from here, and they want service, they want something, because you got to drive out of town. They're going to be doing. I got to be quiet. You can only push it so far. They get the whole thing.
The expansion that's being discussed is from where it is right now, which in effect will be the new police station, because the line ended at the power plant, and obviously we're going to connect up to the new police station. But the discussion is to expand it there down along 138 to try to help the businesses that are there with sewage disposal and also attract some new businesses. Back in 2007, more or less, 7-8, when the Aggie School was running into major problems and pumping continually, they asked about joining. And I said to them, I believe the sewer commissioners will support your tying into the sewer line. Permanent solution, run 138. You're going to have to pay for the whole thing. The town will not put money into it. The engineer for the sewer department at the time told us we had to complete a big study. Well, what we found out was that wasn't true because it was a public school in need of sewage. And DEP advised us you can get a waiver. We didn't have to get the waiver. But now there has to be a phased study for the rest of this project, and it will be at the expense of taxpayers, not necessarily just the users that are on the sewer line now.
Any other questions? Wow, okay. Larry?
I do have one in, not fair to Tom, but you can apply afterwards. I'm wondering, you said you didn't support the modifications to the existing library. So if that were to be funded, or are you not supporting the funding for that project? Because I was on one of the building committees in the 90s, when every time you go to bite at the apple, the money gets turned down for the new building. My concern is, if you're only going to support a new building and not support what's there now, we're going to be stuck with a very bad library. Will you support the proposal and the funding of the proposal as it stands, given that it's the only solution we have right now?
I have always supported a new library. That was what my opponent used against me in my first run back in 7 to 10. But anyhow, as I said then, selectmen don't build libraries. Townspeople build libraries.
But I'm asking whether you would support it.
Architecturally speaking, the current design, no. If they want a new library and resurrect the old plans, absolutely. My only opposition to the current plan is that I feel that the architectural changes that would be made to that building with the steel and glass would quite frankly turn it into an ugly building. So, just as the proposal was back in '07, '08, whenever that came up, that proposal, as I said, had architecture that I personally felt would fit in any neighborhood in this town. And the proposed site actually was out, I believe out where Prime Time is, in that general area, the pine grove that was out there. So, absolutely, if it gets voted at town meeting, yeah, it has to be supported. I will tell you this, that first library proposal passed. The debt exclusion did not pass.
Correct.
So, absolutely.
But, you just reiterated, but essentially, you won't stand up and support the current proposal.
I can stand up at town meeting if the proposal being brought forward is the current architectural design and make the same statements I did tonight. My personal opinion is it ruins a historical building. It takes away, it detracts from a historical building that, quite frankly, I think is a nice building. But when we were going to build the other library, we would still have that building to use for some purpose. That's all I'm saying. But I do support a new library.
Tom?
Well, I was at that, sorry, I was at that meeting, I was at the same, when Jack was running for selectman, and I was there, I saw the architect's design and plans. I don't see a problem with it myself. There's a little bit of the old, but it's basically a new building with some of the old features, but apparently, you know, some people, I don't see a problem with it, I support it. You know, you got to get the money, the funding, the town's gonna, people have to vote. It's just like, you know, we're looking at, that's my beeper. To piggyback on that little thing, yeah.
You have a little
Is it solar or just batteries? Anyhow, yeah, so what you're looking at is, another thing they're looking at is, let's talk about module school issues, to try to work on that too. That's another thing that's coming. It's cost effective. I was at that meeting, I saw that. That's interesting. They're trying to save money. There you go. It's about the money, you know what I mean?
It's always about the money. So, all right. Are we good on questions? Tim?
I do have a question for both candidates. The discussion of medical marijuana has been going on in this town for the last couple of 3 years. And after hearing one of the candidates speak this evening, I just want to I don't know if I should put this out there, but some of the information that was provided tonight was incorrect. Because I serve on the Cannabis Advisory Board in town, so I'll just say this, is that just because a medical facility moves into your town does not automatically mean that a recreational facility or an adult use facility is right behind it. Because if you did not get on board by April 1st, which is coming up, you cannot get that license until later on down the road, or maybe 2 to 5 years down the road. So my question to the candidates is that if a medical marijuana facility wants to move into this town, depending on the information that's provided by that individual or those people that want to come into town, would you be willing to sign a community host agreement in order for this town to have a medical marijuana facility in town?
All right, Tom?
Yes, let me tell you about that complicated stuff. Let me tell you, a lot of different regulations have changed in midstream already from the state. But I think a lot of people don't know. You better have your ducks in a row with your zoning. I mean, your bylaws, you better get your planning, because things can happen. I think there's fine print in there they really have to look at. I mean, I'm not against the recreational, but I think, I don't know, I'm all for the medical marijuana. I'm glad they have that study commission with everybody involved, at least 5, the whole 9 yards. It's excellent health. But they are going to take a hard look at it. But yeah, I support the medical marijuana, but I'm also that other side that people seem to be worried about. I think that's part of why I killed it the last time, not just the location, but some of it was also the fact that If somebody gets their foot in the door, hey, I'll give you an example. You could put, I guess not. All right. And the face is coming up. She's back there. All right. Known him for a long time. So, yeah. You could have, I don't know what they call them. It's a shop. You know, they could have a cafe could come in where you could bring your stuff, in there and have it with a coffee, you know, a cafe and smoke it in. You could have one of these, what they call shops where you buy the paraphernalia, you could come in a business zone. So, I mean, if you don't have your stuff in place, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if you don't have your bylaws in place with this commission, you know what I'm saying? So that's where you're at. But I do like the medical, because there is some positive side to it. It's not just like Cheech and Chong from our day, the 70s. You know what I'm saying? There is some serious people that use, there's oils, there's other things. It's not just, but you know, there's a lot to it if you really look in on a, you know, on a serious note. Nancy?
Okay, I just want to clarify something. When I said if you let medical in, you can't keep recreational out, I didn't say it would immediately fall on the heels of medical. I said you can't keep it out. In effect, what Mr. Rhines just said was, it confirms what I said to you. You can't keep it out. You can regulate it. That's important, okay? We've looked at it from a business standpoint. If it's not a not-for-profit organization, there's tax money, there's benefits to this town. I think it's important that we, our zoning, our planning, every board that needs to be involved, the committee, takes action to make sure that if in fact we have a facility, whether it's maybe both kinds, medical and recreational, that is properly regulated. We don't want a facility that creates problems with a project. Just like we regulate alcohol, all right? You just can't open up a package store in every corner because there's rules about it, not only at our level, but at the state level. So I think the Cannabis Committee, I think that's a good idea because they're looking into all the options.
Yes.
Could you both expand on the topic of the schools, expanding the schools, the elementary and the middle school with the helping everything in
You want to
Expand.
expand on the schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
What would be part of your plan?
Okay. Nancy?
Okay, I missed part of your question. Expansion in what?
Tom, right, you mentioned,
Yes.
the modular home, modular.
The space problem.
Yeah, space problem, yeah.
The Board of Selectmen did have conversations with Dr. Azar about that, and a study committee was appointed. However, having worked in the school department for over 20-some years, that kind of leadership has to come from your elected officials. The school committee. The school committee working with the superintendent, the business manager, and they should have had a building study committee or space study committee. That's who brings it to the Board of Selectmen in the form of a warrant article. I think the task that study committee was given was way beyond what we're talking about. Now, obviously, we know there's a space problem. They refer to it as a bubble. There is one large class that's moving through the system, and we know that they're going to need space at the elementary school. The school department, the administration, the school committee, is working on that, not the study committee, all right? To me, a study committee is a long-term thing, just like we had a study committee looking at police communications. That's what the school department needs to do long-term. But the immediate solution has got to be settled by the local school administration and the people we put in office to represent us at the school level. I certainly support adding on or making enough space for the children in the school. That's common sense. So I'm hoping we're going to see that leadership.
Okay, yes, the modular idea is it's a stopgap to get things organized. They're gonna switch some things around in two smaller schools. They're also addressing some items up at the regional high school. Now, the reason I know this, once again, I attend the meetings. I try to be up there every week. Now, I have to say that I believe the chairman is involved and the selectmen are updated. being proactive, they are being somewhat proactive. They are limited because, as Nancy mentioned, there is the school committee. They are it's a separate kind of entity, but it still impacts our town. And what's nice for a change, I like to see the fact that it's being a proactive approach. They're actually trying to plan ahead for the future, because we can't stop this growth in this town, and these people want the schools. So unfortunately, they're filling up, and they don't have the room. You know, there's all kinds of regulations and such, and safety issues and everything else. I mean, you got people, you can't put them in hallways. You don't have classes in hallways. You know, they've cafeteria issues, stuff like that. So they're trying to address this with a modular, but it's actually, they're pretty nice. They've come a long way. It's not a trailer. It's a module. It almost looks like part of the building once it's attached. I mean, I'll piggyback on the same thing with the roof issue. At least there was a proactive approach. They got together, they worked it out. That's what we gotta do more of, trying to work stuff out, be proactive and work together. You know, not just have your little turf wars all the time. Instead, we can all work together if we work hard enough. I feel it's not easy, but that's what we're built on. You know, and a lot of this grassroots stuff it's important. So I mean, thank you again, these folks for being here, because they care enough to turn it out. That's all for that. I hope it answers your question. Oh, did I go find my?
No, my timer had trouble.
Oh, good. Malfunction.
You jinxed it.
Maybe somebody back in. Oh, don't say
You
that.
jinxed it.
Tom put the curse on.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Questions?
Yeah, I do. Hi, I'm Dave Malva from 102 Forest Street. Has there been any talk about security at our schools? Because the recent shootings like on everybody's mind right now. I know there's only so much we can do as a town, but has there been any talk about it, or what's your view about security?
All right, the security, a lot of it is, it has to remain confidential, the methods and stuff like that. They are meeting on that. As far as being involved with, I've been involved with public safety in the past, and I'm still kind of a retired active firefighter, but I still stay connected with it. And they are meeting with the board, the police, fire. They've had a drill, but the methods, because of security, cannot be made public.
Okay.
But there is, everything's safe. They've got some new good stuff, and they're out there. I mean, the kids are being watched over. So, and I'll tell you right now, it may be a small town. You got some outstanding public safety. You know, I'm not just saying that because I was in public safety, but you got to have the public safety because people need to rest. You know, just to piggyback on that. But things are being done. It just can't be put in the paper. It can't be talked about. If you watch the selectmen's meeting, the chairman mentioned it has to be kept private, you know, confidential.
Thank you.
So,
Having attended a meeting with Chairman Taylor and our town administrator, the superintendent, the fire and police chiefs, business administrator, I feel confident that they are on top of security. That doesn't mean if somebody really wants to get into one of our schools, they can't find a way. And that's why it is extremely important that adults and children alike look out for one another. After the 9/11 incident, somebody said to me, "You're going to keep working in Boston?" And I couldn't understand why I was asked that. They said, "Do you think it's safe?" And I said, "Well, I'm not staying home." And if the T has said from day one, if you see something, say something. You're not going to get in trouble if it turns out to be a nothing. But the only security that each of us has is the security we provide for one another. It doesn't matter if you're on the train in Boston or if your children are here in school. I never worried about when our son was in school. I realized we didn't have those situations, but I can tell you right now, having been to the meeting, having worked in the schools and know what happened years ago and about security, I feel that what needs to be done is being done, in areas that need to be tightened up are going to be tightened up. But you gotta look out for one another. Your children have to understand. See something, say something.
Thank you. Joanne?
Hi, do you feel that the present library is adequate to meet the needs of the town's population for the next 8 years if the money isn't appropriated for the expansion of this library that's being proposed?
Okay, Nancy first. Did you say if the money is or isn't appropriated?
Do you feel that the present library is adequate to meet the needs if the money is not appropriated?
No, it wasn't adequate back in 2007 when we voted on it then. As I said, that project passed. It failed the debt exclusion. We were that close, okay? And that debt exclusion did not fail by loads and loads of votes, all right? The facilities for the library were not adequate then. They're not adequate now. There were still people in town who believe that libraries are a waste of money, that everything is electronic and books and all of that other stuff. Forget it. I don't agree with that. I still read books. I mean, hardcover books, softcover books. When I was doing research for my graduate program, I had to go out of town. Obviously, a small community library didn't have what I needed. But by the same token, I still enjoy going to that library. My only objection is the architectural design that I feel takes away from what was there.
Absolutely, it's not, it's working again. No, it's not adequate. If you don't get the money, I've been in that building. I've only been in this town 5 years, in that bathroom, I couldn't believe it. That's the bathroom that's just one example. It's no good. You gotta do something. It's gonna have to happen. Sometimes it takes time, but how long is it gonna take to get this stuff? This keeps dragging on. And now the research is showing, go back and read a book, put down the machine, put down the iPad, put down they're trying to get them to put it down, give it a break, and get back to the books and stuff. I had my grandson over this past weekend. He's 5 years old. He's just got tested, and he's comprehension. He's super duper top notch in reading. So he's got 3 books. So I read the books to him, and then it was great. So they're trying to, and he loves his little. He actually helps me fix my phone because I can't. And the thing is,
You're not alone.
we're done with that. I'll just get away from that. Bye. All right.
Karen?
Just back to the library again, one of the problems that I see is if there is any change, design, or anything, then we lose our place,
Yep.
whether it be 22nd, and then the next round of funding doesn't come for another 8 years. So that, if this present design, isn't passed, we're talking, a generation that's, perhaps then seeing a library. And even having meetings in the library, it's like, okay, who's going to put little chairs down in the basement or the big table up above? So, and it's not just the books, it's like all the electronics that are there, being able to, go and, use Ancestry, DNA, there, other things that you can get, a hotspot that you can borrow from the library if you don't have internet and, and take it out. There's all these kinds of things that, that are there. So that's one of my concerns, that they.
So your concern is, you have a lot of concerns.
I know.
So, but I don't know quite what the question was.
And I guess the question is, I'm just trying to have, Nancy take a look at, perhaps, I think the architect's design, I didn't think he did a very nice job of what it looked like. When I asked him, the materials, I think are going to be nicer than what the picture shows. So.
Yeah, I don't think we're right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if there are things that could be tweaked that, that are not a change in the whole design, would you, be thinking perhaps that you would then support it?
Okay, all right.
So that, I guess that's my question. If we lose our spot in line.
If we lose our spot in line, and it can't be tweaked, Okay.
Were you here for the first, I'll call it rejection?
Yes,
That was a hard loss.
it was very hard.
I immediately said, schedule another debt exclusion. And they didn't do it. The request did not come forward. My personal opinion was, you only lost by a few votes. You've already got approval to build it. Bring the debt exclusion back for another vote. It didn't happen. All this time went by. That was, I think it was a $4 million something project that we were getting over $2 million for. All right? When this was presented to us, this was going to be a renovation of the existing facility. Now, obviously, the site would have been good if we could have done something with the parking lot, but we all know that AstraZeneca has placed a restriction on that land. It can only be used for that parking lot. That's when they gave it to us. The site there, you can't go hardly any direction except up, all right? You certainly can't go back. If you're gonna tweak something, all I will say to you is you better get the design out there now, because if you're going to town meeting to get a drawing approved, like we did with the police station, what they're building is what's in the foyer over at Town Hall. That's what we all expect that building's gonna look like. Not we're gonna tweak it, or we're gonna do something. The only drawings you have out there right now that I assume you're planning to present to the town for approval, I personally don't like. I'm not the only one that has complained about the design. But I'm saying to you, if it were something that more closely either kept that building in its historic state outside, do anything you want inside, but make the historic part of that look like it belongs there as opposed to the last drawing I saw. Okay? This is part of a discussion we had with the Aggie School when they told us they were going to build those buildings over there. The one thing we brought out of that meeting was, please, whatever you build, make it fit this neighborhood. And what's being proposed down there at, for the library doesn't fit the neighborhood at all.
Yes. All right, the aesthetics, the materials. I went, once again, I was there, the architect's rep was there. The materials, I do recall them talking about the materials, that once you see the materials that are going on the outside, you know, I know where you get them. Apparently the materials, once you see them, I don't know if you get samples, I don't know. That's a stretch, but I mean, I heard that the materials would be pleasing, would tie into that. But I'm not the architect, but that's what I heard at that meeting. I mean, the plans are kind of, it's a plan, it's a blueprint. It's kind of a rendering of you know what I mean, but you can't really touch it. So maybe once, I don't know how you're gonna fine tune, I don't know about fine tune. But I mean, I still support it. Something's gotta happen. So like you say, you're 21, I think. 21 in the pile, and and I heard people talk about this, folks that are interested in this, right now the timing is everything. The timing is, right now is the time. You missed the boat. I don't know what we're going to, I don't know what to tell you. That's happened, as Nancy mentioned years ago. So, you know, I don't want it to happen again, personally.
I take exception to that, sir.
But sure.
I've made my point very clear. The only thing I don't like is the design. To say that I would let that go again, I would also say to you, in all honesty, I'm the one that has to stand up in front of the majority of people that attend town meeting. I am not going to try to sell something to them and ask them to support it if I personally don't. I don't do things that way. I may be the only person that's
We're not going to have an argument between two people, please. Thank you. Okay.
And I would also ask that remarks like that not be allowed.
We should keep our remarks to ourselves, too. This is an open forum. Questions?
I have a question for the candidates.
Yes.
With the tax receipts in the state of Massachusetts going up, and also the monies that expect generated by the revenue from the lottery, how adverse would you feel to, if there's monies left over in free cash and stabilization, if it's not needed for an emergency situation, how adverse would you be to use some of those monies to help defray the tax bills? So my question is that if there's extra monies that are left over in stabilization and free cash that are not earmarked for a major project, that is not of the utmost importance to get done now, how averse would you be to use some of those monies to help defray the tax rate?
To reduce the tax rate.
Yes.
Okay. Tom?
Okay. All right. From what I understand, from reading some of the financials, we're not in that bad a shape. We're technically not in that bad a shape, but all it takes is one misstep on making a decision on something. I think they made, if you read, I don't know if you go online on the web page for the town, there's a financial statement that got released, and they kind of put something in order there to let the public know, I don't know if anybody's seen it, how they would prioritize some of the decisions with the money. I'm not against anything that we can do to try to stabilize. You have to be careful with free cash. I know that you can't just be dipping into free cash all the time. It would have to be, I believe it would have to be voted on. I don't know if that would, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, on that. I don't know if that would have to go to town meeting. But
We actually have two stabilization accounts. We have one that we've had for forever. That's the town savings account. That's the rainy day fund if some disaster happens. That's the money we fall back on. That is never used to reduce taxes. The second stabilization account that we have is the capital stabilization account, which is something that got set up a few years ago. Capital means exactly what it says. That's for a building project or a major capital expense. We don't use that money to buy equipment. We don't use it to repair a roof or something like that. Free cash is a different story, and every year when the fall meeting takes place, when we finalize the budget, because the one that goes to town meeting in June is a balanced budget, and those are operational funds to get us through the year. Quite often there are extra requests that we don't take to the June town meeting because it would affect the levy limit. So we go into town meeting in June with a balanced budget. Free cash doesn't get certified until the end of August, early September. Once the state certifies free cash, then we know exactly how much money we have. And in the past, what's happened is money's been used to reduce the tax rate. Not that anyone saw a big savings. As a matter of fact, the tax rate went down a few pennies this year, but valuations went up, so I think most people's tax bills increased. So the rate goes down and the valuation goes up, and you pay more. The other thing is, the free cash is also used not only to cover warrant articles, non-recurring warrant articles. Let's say we're going to buy a cruiser, or we're going to buy a truck for the highway department, or we're going to do something for another department. It usually comes out of free cash. Also this past year, what we did was we've taken money out of free cash to help fund the OPEB account. That's that liability we have for retirees, insurance and things. We put money into the stabilization account, and I believe we put money into capital stabilization, and there is still some money left in free cash. But free cash is also something that is, if you will, held in case there is an emergency during the year. After that fall town meeting, the tax rate gets set. Once you set the tax rate, you can't go back and ask the people to give you more money that would be raised and appropriated. But if something comes up and you have to call a town meeting and you need money, then you look at your free cash balance and see what's there. What Mr. Balkin was saying is correct. To get money out of stabilization or capital stabilization, it's a town meeting vote, and it must be a 2/3 vote. It's not that easy to access it. Free cash expense approvals are majority votes. So think of the June town meeting as this is everything we need to pretty much get us through the next fiscal year, but in the fall, when we know what we have for free cash and can look at those various accounts, and they're like other savings accounts. That money is put aside for certain reasons. and we try not to, well, we haven't spent it, quite frankly. There was a time we were below $1 million. For a town this size, that's unheard of, to be below $1 million. But that's when times were really tight. Things have gotten better. We are well below the levy limit also, which means we are well below the Prop 2.5 levy limit. So that's something else you need to know.
Okay, questions? We're good? Okay. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank the candidates for coming out, and I would encourage everyone to vote on our April 7th election. Thank you.
Can I make one announcement?
Oh, sure.
I gotta give you a plug. Also on Election Day, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., there is going to be something called the STEAM Expo at Dighton, Rehoboth. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. This is the second year the high school's had this program. This year, the Town of Dighton Stormwater Committee is going to be part of that program, and we are going to attempt to expand our education program. The EPA, through this whole stormwater thing that will never go away, never, has required the towns to expand education programs beyond the grade school level. So the program we're putting together is going to expand to hopefully reach adults and also businesses, because stormwater is everyone's problem. Nobody wants to hear it, but it's the truth. So anyhow, between 10 and 2, if you have some time, you can stop at the regional high school. We will be having information, and I'm sure the high school kids are going to be doing a great job too, but just something else we're doing this year because we're required. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.